Welcome to the William Hill Sports Book Club. I'm Adrian Durham, and on this edition we're discussing a book that as soon as I had it in my hands, I knew it was a work of art, a proper work of art, something to be treasured, something to be cared for, something very special. A good friend of talkSPORT, one of the finest boxing journalists ever, Gareth Davies, has put together a book about boxers and about boxing called Call of the Warrior. And on this episode, we'll discuss some of the amazing photographs.
I can remember opening the book and reading the rewards are there for all of us who fight, and I absolutely sobbed. Do you remember?
You did.
And
it
we
was
both
emotional.
got very emotional.
Gareth tells us about some of the characters from the sport of boxing that are featured in the book.
I truly believe he didn't know how great he was going to get to. And I think he's been frustrated at the end of his career that he couldn't beat Usyk, that he couldn't be the man of the era. Even though he's probably earned hundreds of millions of pounds, he's got companies set up for generational wealth.
It's all about the Call of the Warrior on this edition of the William Hill Sports Book Club. Hi there, I'm Adrian Durham, and this is the William Hill Sports Book Club. With me, as ever, is professional book reader Neil Foggin from William Hill. How you doing, Foggy?
I've never been called professional before.
It happened very rarely in your career, I think. This is a man who messaged me Friday night saying he was about to read a book, then messaged me the Sunday, 2 days later, saying he'd read 2 books, and I still wasn't through the first chapter of the first one. So that's how professional you are.
Actually, to be fair, it was 3 books I'd read in that period.
He sets a standard that not many of us can reach. So listen, absolute machine. Fair play to you for that. This is a different one today. It's a photo book. It's a coffee table book. What did you make, Neil, of Call of the Warrior?
It's beautiful. As you say, it's a work of art. We don't get many of these books entered, and when we were told that it was coming in, I didn't know what to think. I mean, as soon as you open it, you think, wow, this just blows you away. It's actually a privilege to have a copy of this book because it is, and it's balanced. The writing's beautiful, the imagery as well. Everything is working together.
Now, those who've watched these before know that I have a million post-it notes in my copies of the books, don't I?
Yeah.
I write in the books as well, which I know is sacrosanct, but I actually do it for the purposes of this show. However, I couldn't bring myself to put a post-it note in this book. I couldn't write in this book either. It was so special. I see, Foggy, you have put loads of post-it notes.
Yeah, but they're going to come back off when we've done this.
With us as well is the very best boxing journalist around, Gareth Davies. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, and what wonderful words so far on the book. And I'm glowing here hearing about it because I didn't realise while Sonya and myself were doing it over 5 years just how proud I would be of it when it came out, and where people like Bob Arum are sending us messages saying they love it so much, where Anthony Joshua is sending us videos saying thank you so much and teasing us, throwing the book away first of all and then getting it thrown back to him. And Colin Hart, my kind of mentor really in boxing, is like a father to me. I bumped into him the other day at a press conference, and Sonya had sent the book to him. Sonya Jasinski had sent the book to him. And he said to me, it is brilliant. And honestly, I'm quite emotional even saying that. It meant so much to me.
Well, I think boxing's been waiting for this book. And you mentioned Sonya there. Sonya Jasinski is with us as well, the person who took many of the photos in the book. How are you doing? You okay?
Hi, thank you for having us.
Oh, it's great to have you with us. The big question everybody will want answering is, it took 5 years for this book from start to finish. How on earth did you put up with Gareth? 5 long years.
Yeah, that's a long time. Very patient. Well, I mean, before this book, I was doing music photography, and you just have to be patient with musicians, or you just have to learn how to be patient. And Gareth's a lover, first and foremost, and he is passionate. And so that just drives you on. It just drives you on, and you believe in the project, and working with someone passionate it's thrilling and exciting above all,
I've got to echo that because we haven't seen each other, even though we work on the same radio station. We haven't seen each other for a long time. But it feels like yesterday. And you remember the conversation we had. I remember the conversation we had. And most people who have heard me talk about boxing will appreciate that I'm definitely not an expert on the sport. And when people like Gareth start talking about boxing, you just shut up and listen because it's an education for everybody. So when I was told that this is the book we were going to do on this edition, I got stuck straight into it. I loved it straight away. It is a beautiful book. I'm going to make a comparison here because I recently I treated myself to I bought a first edition of a classic book from 300 years old. And when you're handling this book, you handle it with care, okay? And I feel exactly the same as this, even though it's not 300 years old. That's the comparison I would make. You treasure it. It needs to be respected. It's high end. It's a quality product as well. It's a special thing. Was that your vision at the start?
Well, I mean, the shape and form and texture of the book is very much down to the beauty that Sonya has and sees in photography and the human spirit. It's something that I see raw deeply and viscerally in human beings that choose to fight. The book essentially is about the vulnerability and the difficulty that people have because they're called to fight, and what a weird and extraordinary and deep and ancient passion it is when you're called to do it. Every single essay in the book, my own, Sonya's photographs, Michael Buffer, the promoters, all the fighters in it, and I know you'll come to it, even KSI and Jake Paul, who are not seen as traditional fighters.
The trainers in there as well.
Then the trainers. There is a calling. And, you know, I've been involved in boxing for 35 years and mixed martial arts and martial arts for a long time. And I feel it. It's not just a thing I do as a profession. I genuinely feel it. And what I think happened with Sonya and I, we realised we are the same. The reason she could put up with me for 5 years is that we are very similar in spiritual beings, creative beings, and that's what we wanted this to be. And I really appreciate you saying that about the book, because we even treat it. I brought book one in with me today, which is book one of the 1,000.
Wow.
Which I'm allowed to scrape and scratch. This is you put one on it, didn't you? Yeah. I'm allowed to carry it anywhere I want to take it. So it can get fingerprints on it. It can get stained around breakfast with bacon and egg or whatever. But we wanted it to be special, and it's not until the manifestation of something being real do you realise the pride, where you speak in the foreword, where you get Joe Calzaghe to write the foreword for you, where you write a paean to your parents and your children or your relatives, and you realise that, oh my God, we have created 2.2 kilos of art that people appreciate. And so I do appreciate what you've said.
And the your dedication in the book, Sonya, it led me to think that you had actually been a boxer, okay? And that's not quite the case.
No.
Is it? So what, and I believe that originally this was your idea and you were put with Gareth to make this book happen.
Yeah.
So what led you to boxing? Do you enjoy it? Do you like it? Do you box?
I you know what? I've never ever tried sparring. I have these like tiny little wrists and I'm always too scared. But I need to do it. I need to do it at some point. So
that's a promise.
I know. I need to go at least try it. So basically, I did a coffee table book 10 years ago based on Nashville, and it was sort of like a cross section of artists, songwriters, producers, actors that were on the Nashville TV show. And it was sort of like, let's do a book about what they love about Nashville and why they love it. And let's have some sort of reportage style photos like the 60s and 70s, proper rock and roll, like original Rolling Stone magazine type of photos that, you know, give intimate glimpses along with some essays. Because country music is just it's still growing rapidly, and people love it, and people are interested. And we don't want to see polished airbrush photos. Let's see the nitty gritty. And did that book, and it did really well. And with boxing, my dad raised my sister and I on all the matches in the 90s. It was a big thing in our household to watch a fight at the weekend. And it was, it was just electric. And then I remember my mom remarried, and we were in Vegas staying at the MGM. And Mike Tyson had just had a fight, and it was finishing, and we were coming back to the hotel, and all the crowd was dispersing out of the arena, and I was like, wow, and I could just feel just like the excitement, and I was like 16 years old, and I was just like, wow, and I've just always been enticed by it, and so my best friend in the world, Oliver Slipper, I've known him since I was like 19. He's really good friends with Barry Hearn, and I met Barry around over 10 years ago, and I had this idea, and I went to him, and I was like, I want to do a boxing book like the Nashville book. What do you have? And I need someone to write the words for the book. Do you have any idea? And he came back straight away, like didn't even bat an eyelid, and said Gareth Davies. And then in the same day I contacted Gareth, and Gareth was interested, pretty much said yes, and that was it. And we started, and so I just kind of wanted to do the same concept where it's do fly on the wall pictures of these boxers, and let's like get a glimpse of them, something to do with their personality. Let's get to the emotional core of these guys. So that was the premise of the book.
Well, we'll get onto some of the photos very shortly, because some of them are absolutely incredible. One other question before we get stuck into the book, Gareth, and that's, you've been a journalist, 35 years, something like that? 35
years now, yeah.
I was astonished to hear that this is your first book. Why is it only your first book? Why haven't you written before? And secondly, what was it about this book that when Barry Hearn put you in touch, you thought, yes, I'm going to do this one?
Probably a dozen times people have asked me to do their autobiography, and I've kind of got to the cliff and then thought, no, I don't want to jump off. Mainly because I've had a lot of sex, drugs and rock and roll in my life as well. And I was thinking, when I write my book, am I going to tell warts and all or not?
Are you?
Probably not.
I'll do it for you. I'll do that for you.
That's not going to win the award.
Yeah.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But I think when as soon as Sonya spoke to me about, I grew up with Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali as my heroes. Born in '65. They were enormous for me when I was a small child. Bruce Lee, the greatest martial artist we've ever seen, but did he really ever have a fight? But he was extraordinary. Muhammad Ali made black beautiful, and Dad was working around the world, and we were able to pick up American Forces Broadcasting, so we watched Gridiron, we watched the Ali fights. Always begged Dad, remember sports night on a Wednesday night, begged Dad to let me stay up till 10, 11 o'clock when I was 8, 9, 10 to watch the boxing. I always had a thing about fight sports, even though I played a lot of kind of quite high-level rugby and cricket. But I loved martial arts, went to train in martial arts for a year in China when I left university. I've always been fascinated by it, how the human being is drawn to use their energy for those purposes. Because we're all fairly destructive as human beings. We're all capable of violence. But to train it is an amazing thing. When Sonya came to me with the concept, I was on board straight away. I knew it was right. And as I say, we become really close friends, spiritually, kind of emotionally through doing the book. I mean, you can tell the story, Sonya. I mean, I've had a few really serious health problems over the last 5 years. What were you telling me?
I did. I was basically...
How many times?
I did. I might have said, please don't. Nothing. I just didn't want anything really bad.
No, you said, don't you dare die while we're making. Don't you dare die before you finish writing all these essays. You said that to me.
There was
word for
something
word.
Said
That's how close
that.
we were.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. That just shows how close we are. But what's amazing is, I started doing. I created a little PDF of the book, of like a sample book, to show the boxers, like, this is a legit project. Please say yes to being in it. And so Gareth wrote like an introduction type thing, and he wrote like a foreword. He wrote a foreword, and he wrote an essay for Canelo. And I remember receiving them, and it was just so beautiful and so emotional, and it was like a ballet, and it just sort of like danced around like, you know, a boxer's childhood and what's happened and where is this coming from, and the warrior title almost kind of organically came about just with Gareth's writing of these boxers, but they just moved me. And like what Gareth said earlier, we are two highly emotional people and highly sensitive, and the book is just real raw emotion, and you know, it is done with love, and we're loving on everyone, and it is, and just, well, Gareth and I just have this similar outlook that is just very heartfelt, and so the partnership worked. It just worked.
Well, clearly it works. We're talking about Call of the Warrior. It is volume 1 as well, so there's another one to come. It's the William Hill Sports Book Club. It's the William Hill Sports Book Club. It's Call of the Warrior by Gareth A. Davies. And we're going to get into some of the photos very shortly. I want to quickly, Gareth, go through the foreword and the introduction, some of which is just mind-blowingly beautiful. Joe Calzaghe wrote the foreword. The photos of Joe are excellent. They're just wonderful to see. He talks about our call to fight. Those are the words he used. Many people feel the call of the warrior. It is a calling, although we're not always able to fathom where it comes from, but it is there. I'm going to revisit that a bit later on. You yourself in the introduction, and Sonya mentioned before that, you know, the power of the words and the beauty of the words. There's a phrase in there which just captured my heart. That boxing is a dance of feet and fists. It is both natural and unnatural to fight, which is a sentence that you could think about for days and days and days. You say the call of the warrior for both men and women, from their nature, from DNA, and from nurture. Boxing also has a dark underbelly. And another sentence in there, boxing, the greatest sporting event to witness at close quarters. Now, close quarters, if you are ringside and, you know, it's a proper humdinger of a fight, there's a likelihood you're going to get spattered with sweat and blood. So how is that the greatest sporting event to witness at close quarters?
Because it is human beings at their most raw, their most frail, their most exposed, and their most dangerous, if you like. All those things you mentioned, I genuinely have experienced over time. Joe was very kind to invite Sonya and myself down to his ramshackled old rugby club gym. I'm a Welsh Italian. Joe was. I covered his career. Very close to Joe. I think he's one of our greatest post-war boxers, probably maybe behind Muhammad Ali, just in front of Nazim Hamed, just in front of people like Carl Froch.
Well, the greatest
Tyson
British.
Fury.
He's got to be the greatest British.
Yeah, undefeated, of course, as well. We had a fantastic day with him down there.
It looks derelict, the place.
Oh no, it is. It's totally derelict.
Oh, right.
with raindrops coming through into buckets and all sorts.
Yeah.
And where he obviously fell in love with the sport, and where his father Enzo drove him, and without Enzo he wouldn't have made it. And there's an essay on Joe as well as the foreword in the book. Very special character. But when you're sitting ringside, I know you cover sport in depth as well, and mainly football. Boxing is a very lonely sport. It's one person, and in many ways it's a business rather than a sport in the professional realm. And at the end of the day, and I've experienced this many times, not just in writing these essays, but even with the individuals involved, and you feel it more as I'm a grandfather now, and it's a very, very dangerous sport. It's inherently dangerous. And at the end of the day, it is a fight. It's not like other sports. It's not knocking a ball over a tennis net. It's not being with 10 other men on a football field where you might get injured, or even catastrophically injured, or a rugby field where you're catastrophically injured and committing yourself. I played rugby, I know what it's like. You can get legally killed in the ring. So it brings in a lot of other factors, and I think it does hark back in DNA terms all the way to gladiators. As I mentioned in the book, Virgil writes about it, Ernest Hemingway, Norman Mailer, some of the greatest writers we've ever had have embraced fight sports because it's just different. It's almost not a sport compared to the others. And I think Sonya felt that while she was photographing the guys away from the ring as well. Yes, we did some sessions with people in training, but none of them on the fight night. It's very different. It's a weird thing, fighting.
It is, and I think this is the beauty of the pictures. And Foggy, you've picked out a number of photos for us, your favourite photos from this book. The first of which that we'll look at is it's the one of it's page 250 if you want to get to it. And the Frank Warren photos are good, fun photos. They're really enjoyable. I stared at this photo for a long, long time because it was that good. Foggy, you picked out the photo of Frank Warren with a statue of Prince Nazim Hamid, which is mind-blowing because it was a gift from Nazim Hamid to Frank Warren. It's a brilliant photo, isn't it? Why'd you pick this one?
You take a lot of the words for me there. But I think with this one, I like the fun side of it. And you look at the statue and you think, when you read the underneath it, it says to Frank Warren, the best promoter in the world, from Prince Nazim Hamid, the best boxer in the world. And it's just that comical and how he believed in himself. And the fact that Frank's not taking himself serious next to it. I just find it, and what I like about all the photographs is what you said, Gareth, and what you've done, Sonya, is they're not in the ring. It's not fight night. We're seeing a different side. We're seeing this as an art form. And a lot of these pictures, Frank one maybe not, but the other ones I've picked, you could see them on someone's wall as a piece of art because it's not the boxing we see on television when it's fight night.
Well, I can see Frank Warren's got that statue as a piece of art, isn't it, in his house? So what did you think, Sonya, when you saw that?
I mean, it's great because it's at their offices, and you walk in and it's in the entrance as soon as you walk in, and then all his sons were there, and it was just like a whole family event. But it was that photo was taken at the end of the shoot because by then we've like broken the ice and everyone's comfortable because look, the first 10 minutes of photographing anyone is always a little bit nerve-wracking for the subject and the photographer, but then we'd spent like an hour together in his office, and this was kind of like on the way out. But yeah, it's just this, having that in his offices, it just shows the relationship that Frank has with these boxers and that they love him, and this is a gift that he's been given. But it's awesome going into offices and seeing like bells and photographs and memorabilia. He had a Top of the Pop sign in his office. Do you remember? Yeah. And there was also this amazing game he had on the coffee table, in his office, and it was. What do you call? It was a
Victorian marionettes boxing.
Oh right, yeah.
Thing, and his wife Susan had bought for him, maybe for his 60th or something like that, or an anniversary, and he's very proud of it. And it is an I mean, as you both know, Frank is a very erudite man. He's from the hood in Islington. His dad was a bookmaker. Frank came up kind of the rough way, gambling machines and all sorts, fruit machines, selling cigarettes in clubs. But he is a very, very smart man who loves culture. And that day in his office, you had a field day taking the cultural photographs.
It was
didn't
just
you?
it's that's the beauty. That's the beauty of reportage. It's just like, let's sit and hang and relax, and he just sat on his sofa in the office with this table starting to play, and he just started fiddling with this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, this is the most amazing shot. And then you pick up your camera, and it's just let's just organically see what happens here.
It's this one. This one.
That was going to be. It was between that one and this one. Yeah. But this one makes me laugh.
Yeah.
No,
because
this is
it's
good.
just over the top. It's flamboyancy.
And that's all from him.
What
yeah.
But you see Frank. I've sat in interviews with Frank. He's a very serious person, very passionate what he does. But you sort of see the fun side of Frank.
Yeah.
In this. You see a different side of him. He's very relaxed. He's not taking himself seriously.
Well, I opened the essay with, in the summer of 1990, Frank Warren promoted Frank Sinatra on his 75th birthday tour at the London Arena. 9 months earlier, on November the 30th, 1989, the renowned boxing promoter was shot outside the Barking Theatre in Barking by an unidentified attacker clothed in a balaclava.
Incredible.
So, I mean,
the power of
that. I mean, it's a movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a great writer. It's a movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie.
Yeah.
you know?
It is a movie, but no, it's totally him being silly, and he came up with that, and he was. I was like, wait, can you stand there? And he was like, cool. What should I do? And then he does. He goes to do it, but by then we're warmed up and we're having fun.
And his three sons are all involved in boxing: George, Francis, and Henry. I mean, you couldn't write it. You couldn't write it.
But you could.
But we might end up writing it.
If you go, the next one is page 186. Foggy, you picked out. This is Canelo is a great fighter, obviously. Canelo's father and son training teams. It's the photo of those two together, and I think that's. This is a special one because you're getting behind Canelo here, and the people that make him tick, the people that make him the great fighter that he is, Foggy. And I suspect that's why you picked this photo.
Because his son, again, I'm going to be saying words all the time. It's just natural, and it's no boxing, no life gets me. And I know that's their brand, but it sums it up. And you see the theme of warrior and no boxing, no life all the way through this book. And I just liked it. And I like the fact that they are so calm, relaxed, just looking into what's happening. You can see their proud heritage in the background. Everything in that shot. It's just a natural shot. They're just going about their business.
Well, the story behind this, Sonya and I travelled together to San Diego for this, and we were very, very privileged on that day to spend a lot of time with Saúl Canelo Alvarez de Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I speak Spanish, so I'm very fortunate. I've spoken to him in Spanish down the years. He speaks English now. But on that day, and they really did let us inside the camp, and it was a secret place in San Diego, wasn't it? And we spent time with Don Chepo and Eddie Arenoso, and also Oscar De La Hoya that day, and Canelo. It was an amazing day, wasn't it?
It was amazing, and I think it was like a week before his fight.
It was.
So it was a little bit. It was like a little bit tense. Like I think I arrived just before you, and the guy in the door is like, I don't know if like the champ's going to be ready for this, because we were going in to be kind of invasive, and it is quite very close to his fight. But yeah, I think that you speaking Spanish is obviously very helpful. And I think we didn't offend anyone too much, and we tried to like just blend into the walls a little bit. But when I take pictures in this situation, I don't ask anyone to pose. I'm merely a fly on the wall, and you have to get that balance right as well. And we were in there for a good couple of hours.
And there was a great reverent. There's a feeling of, on that photograph that you mentioned with, I think, is it with father and son with Canelo?
Yeah.
There's a great reverence for him. They've had him since he was 14 down in Mexico, and Don Chepo is really renowned in Mexico as an old school trainer. Eddie Reynoso's come up with the motif, no boxing, no life. But you could feel the beauty. They were like uncle and father with him, weren't they? It was quite extraordinary.
Such a union between them.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It felt very special in that room.
It did.
You've captured it, there's no doubt.
Oh, thank you.
I really have, yeah. You can sense that. And the other thing it's an education, I'll say it again, this book. I didn't know Canelo meant cinnamon, and it's because of his red hair.
Exactly.
So I'm going to start calling myself
and there's another
Yeah,
story
like
here, which is worth knowing. Los de los San Patricios, an Irish contingent fought with the Mexicans against the Americans in the Mexican War of Independence with the Americans. So there are statues of San Patricio, the redheads, St. Patrick's, all over Mexico. And I once did an interview with him, and I said, is your grandfather Irish? Because you look like kind of an Irish hooker or a scrum half in rugby. And he said, I think I've got Irish in the family, my brother.
Oh,
yeah.
fantastic.
So yeah,
What
his
a
mother
great
Maria,
story.
he believes has got Irish in the family. Yeah.
Listen, you've got to take him to Ireland and photograph him there for the next book. This is
Yeah.
We're going to write the next book here. Next photos we'll look at. Page 147, Anthony Joshua. These are brilliant photos. There's two that you've picked out here, Foggy. One's the tattoo and one's his hands. Go for it.
Yeah, you asked for 3 and I got greedy and gave you more than that. I couldn't. Let's start with the tattoo. I think this one and the next one, you could see this on anyone's. You could see it on a celebrity's wall, someone buying this and having it as a piece of art. And I think it's just that connection between wisdom and his heritage. And that's what comes through. And the fact that it's just focusing on that. It's just a clean, simple shot for me. It's not a simple shot at all, but it just comes across as elegant for me. It's beauty.
There's a simplicity to it.
Yes,
These the AJ photos were taken by Chris, an amazing British photographer called Chris Floyd, and yeah, so he gave me a collection of outtakes that he had, and I really loved this one, and it's exactly that. It's like you know, his heritage and what he stems from, and which will have a huge part into his drive, and that's really important. And it's just such a beautiful shot, isn't it? And
well, there's the muscle, there's the skin there. It's just such a...
And it's delicate. It's really delicate.
It's a whole page. It's powerful, really powerful. When you open that page up and you see it, it really does hit you. It's wonderful.
I think Adrian, Foggy, Sonya, the thing is about Anthony Joshua, and I say this now, I don't think I've ever said this before. Anthony is a British lad. He's been amazing as a behemoth in British boxing, and I do hope we get the Anthony Joshua-Tyson Fury fight this summer, even though Tyson Fury is temporarily retired at the moment. Obviously, he's in the book, we'll come to it. But Anthony Joshua, my feeling is he is under pressure in the UK to perform as a young British hipster who's incredibly successful, hundreds of millions in the bank, resonant of an era. The last, Olympic super heavyweight gold medalist, which makes you an automatic hero with the nation, doesn't it? He'll probably be knighted down the line. People are knighted for lesser things. But I think that wisdom and that map of Africa on his right shoulder, when you see him go home to Nigeria and is on his little scooter and he's with all his cousins and his nephews, I think he's more comfortable. I don't mean more comfortable because I don't want it to be construed as colorism or racism in any way, but he's very comfortable going home as well. And I think one of the things in fight sports and one of the things in sport in general is we have a heritage of African Americans, Caribbeans, Indians, Pakistanis in our country who play sport here as well, but they have a DNA that's from a different place. So him celebrating that is a beauty as far as I'm concerned. And I notice it more with Anthony. He's under less pressure when he goes back to Africa.
That's the key word, pressure, isn't it? Because when I've done debates on Anthony Joshua. Would he beat Fury? Is he as good as Fury? Has he fought anybody? All of these debates. But all that does is add to the pressure. People are going to talk. They are going to have debate. There's going to be opinions left, right and centre on any sport. Boxing is included in that. And when you're as high profile as Anthony Joshua, and we've all been waiting for this Fury fight for so flipping long.
Exactly.
When you're that high profile and there's something on the cards that everybody wants, he's still going to be talked about. He can't get away from it. The other one is of AJ's hands. And if we move on to the next photo, and this is one of yours, Sonya. This is... page 75, and this is ex-footballer, now trainer, Ben Davison, who's worked with Fury and with Joshua, I believe.
Yeah.
This
Moses Itauma and Fabio Wardley.
Some of the big guys. This is another hand picture, Foggy. What's going on here? Is there a hand?
I might be reading too much into this. But
it's boxing, so it is about hands. Come on, be fair. Be fair.
So for me, it's the significance of him holding the white towel. And it's that feeling that... he's got some sort of pressure on him, and the significance of the white towel, throwing the white towel in, and that's how I saw it, of this image of the power of this cloth.
You've
basically
gone very deep there. That's amazing.
I love this, but I have such a thing about hands. Like if you look at my Instagram, I have so many pictures of just people's hands, like with rings on them, or like I've always had a thing. But even that AJ photo, just quickly, I put that in there because of the calluses on his hands, and it's like you're basically showing his inside on the outside.
His instrument. Yeah.
And that's like his heart. His heart is there sitting on his hands.
Whenever you sit with Anthony interviewing him, it's hard not to... He's got huge hands, Anthony, AJ, And it's hard not to notice because he talks a lot with his hands here, and it's hard not to notice those callous knuckles.
The character, people's
they are part of his
personalities and their
personality,
souls
yeah.
are on
It's
their
his
hands.
story, isn't
Yeah.
It is. My daughter always says, "I love your hands." Like she loves when I touch things. I don't know. It's just some people have a thing about it. But
We're doing a book of musicians' hands, aren't we, next?
I definitely there's something I am doing something with hands next for sure. But yeah. So I guess. Ben was standing on the ring and we were in his training camp and yeah.
And the key with Ben, I got to know Ben when he brought Tyson Fury back from the brink. I went to Marbella and met up with him, Billy Joe Saunders, who introduced Ben Davison and Tyson Fury together when Tyson Fury weighed nearly 30 stone. And as Ben told me, and as you rightly say with the towel, as Ben tells me in this interview, I had to for Tyson Fury, and he's doing the same with Anthony Joshua and the very young Moses Itauma and Fabio Wardley, who are all in the top 10 right now. I had to be trainer, psychologist, physiologist, nutritionist, and friend.
Wow.
It's a big job, like you say, and that towel is maybe emblematic of that.
Yeah.
It's so significant. Obviously, they are the guys that can throw the towel in, number one. But I don't know. He was standing there, and I was doing like a full length shot of him, and then I just suddenly noticed that he was holding that towel. And actually, he just had been doing some sparring, and he was sweating profusely. And then he was holding it, and I was like, wait, I need that shot. And actually, it is symbolic of Ben, and he did do all of that. It's like what he did for Fury, the way he was everything for him. And it's just, he's a wise man. And when you're with him, you really get to know that he's the total old soul. He's like he's young, but he's so wise. And that towel did seem important for Ben because he's like an all-rounder. I don't know. I just loved that shot.
And finally on Ben, what we talked about was he gets his fighters, and I've experienced this with other MMA trainers. He gets his fighters to study Sun Tzu, the Chinese military strategist and philosopher on the art of war, who wrote amazing tomes about fighting, and the philosophies help with your game plan strategy. And I just think that's great. When he's not even 30, Ben, he's going to be a great trainer.
Yeah.
Really is.
And started out as a footballer. And they say footballers are thick. Far from it.
Oh, this guy knows what's up. He's a very wise young man.
Great radar.
Yeah, very
great picks
good.
there, Foggin.
Exactly that.
Thank you very much. My favourites, won't go into them because we need to let you judge for yourself and get into them for yourself. The Josh Taylor photos, I think, are absolutely super. At home with Josh Taylor, wonderful. It's his personality. The very best photos, I think, in the book are the ones of Gareth A. Davies himself. The one at the front taken in Primrose Hill, you have got some charisma, my friend, honestly. It's just, you're just sitting there, but wow, it's a big photo.
Yeah, but that
one.
Queen's Head Hotel, we drank a lot of tequila there and got through, I think, 1,500 photos one day in a 12-hour session.
We spent
and
hours there.
Fraser, the manager of the pub, the Queen's is a very famous pub in Primrose Hill, right on the corner there. I think one of the Gallaghers used to live up there from Oasis. Led Zeppelin's Robert Plant lives there. I knew him as a teenager. I used to play tennis with him when I was at school down in Gwent, and we went from there to Limonia. There's a great restaurant along there. Do you know the restaurant?
The
Limonia?
Greek restaurant.
Yeah,
And we'd have lunch, dinner, and just go back to the pub and sit in that. It's a little corner, and we literally got the book over the line there, didn't we? Really?
We
I mean, it's
did.
terrible to admit that your office was a pub to finish the book, but it was.
What a life. Honestly, I've been in the wrong job all these years. It's the William Hill Sports Book Club. It's the William Hill Sports Book Club. We're talking about Call of the Warrior, Boxing Edition, Volume 1. There's more to come, not just boxing. Gareth A. Davies wrote the words. Sonya Jasinski took most of the photos in the book, and it's a brilliant book. There's no question about it. Take a look. It's a work of art. We must talk about Tyson Fury. Wonderful photos of Tyson, and there's a great shot of Gareth A. Davies' back in one of the Tyson Fury photos. You look like Bono from U2. I actually thought it was a rock star, and then I realised no, that's actually Gareth A. Davies. Your hair's highlighted, There's a chain around you. You've got a sleeveless waistcoat. It's an incredible photo. And then I look at Tyson Fury, who's got this bizarre suit on. Amazing photographs. Tyson Fury was he easy to photograph?
Very easy. It was so much fun. Well, he loves Gareth for a start. And that shoot was interesting. And thank gosh, Gareth and I were in the same country at the same time, because some of these shoots weren't planned, and you got to take what you can get if you're lucky enough for it to happen. And Gareth was with Tyson that day, and it was like Gareth rang me and he's like, you need to come to Bristol immediately. So I charged up my couple of cameras, and then I got in the car and got on the motorway, and it was great, and it was a really relaxed environment. And so Tyson was chill, and we started talking about his love for country music, and that was it. And then everyone just got on super well, and he's even pretending to play, or he's doing like air guitar for me, and it was like good. But you have a great rapport with him, so that's obviously a great start to any shoot.
The context that day was that I'd got a call from his manager, Spencer Brown, and said, look, and I've done about 7 or 8 emceeing with him on stage on tour. He doesn't do it now. He's too wealthy and too famous to do it. This is a couple of years back. When was it? 2022. And I went on over a course of about 3 or 4 years. His management team would ring me out of the blue and say, can you do Bristol? Can you do London? Can you do Manchester? Can you do Indigo at the O2 Arena? When? Tomorrow. Okay, no problem. Here's a fistful of dollars. Go on stage with Tyson, tell his life story. You know him really well. He's very comfortable with you. Let it go. And that was Bristol that day. And I know I've just got a waistcoat on. Tyson and I were knocking about in the green room for about 2 hours. You got on really well. We did photos with his father that day, with John Fury.
Yep.
Nick Blackwell, who was catastrophically injured by Chris Eubank Jr. in a fight, was there that day with his partner. You did photos of those. We hung out with him. He was amazing with Sonya that day. I said, can Sonya come up and do a photo shoot with you? He was absolutely amazing. We had a great night on stage that night in a leisure centre in Bristol, by a cricket ground, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And there were 1,000 odd people there. He probably can't do that now, since the Riyadh season, since the Wilder fights. He's a different entity now. Like Conor McGregor's a different entity. Like Ronda Rousey's a different entity. Like Mayweather and Pacquiao. Maybe even Ricky Hatton to a certain extent became different entities when they became so famous. You couldn't pinion them to a place for a couple of hours anymore because there's so many people around them. But that was a very special day, and he just had fun with us, didn't he?
He did have fun. And by the way, I promised you in this book I would make you look like a rock star.
And then you have. And that's what he calls me, the rock star of British journalism. And you did it.
Does he?
And he called me that before, and you did it that day, and that is a top picture of me, yeah, I must say. even though it's the back of me.
I was going to say, can't see your face.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe, yeah. Are you, in terms of him being a fighter and being in the ring, are you going to miss Tyson Fury?
Oh, we're all going to miss Tyson Fury. The problem is because he happily plays the heel, and he's a divisive figure, as well as being a folkloric figure for many people. People put the boot in when others are down now. But I think maybe on social media they do in any case.
And we've talked about this before. And then they meet you in person.
And then they meet you in person, you don't. Yeah, exactly. And I think I'll say this on record: he's the greatest character in the heavyweight division since Muhammad Ali. He brings so much. Who do you know that takes the microphone and sings country and western music or rock music after he's been 12 rounds with Deontay Wilder? They aren't around these people. He's not normal. He's an extraordinary character.
Okay, so let's just hold it right there for a second. I'm gonna give you some quotes from the book. Frank Warren on Fury. Tyson Fury is the closest thing we've had to Muhammad Ali in the heavyweight division. Bob Arum, legendary promoter. Fury is the biggest personality we've had in boxing since Ali. You call Fury an entertainer who can fight. That's what you call him in the book. And Fury himself says, I'm a big, fat, bald guy who can box, which I think is a wonderful quote.
Who puts the bins out every Thursday and takes 7 kids to school.
Yeah. But the Muhammad Ali comparison, I think, is one where people will... really. Is it really Tyson Fury? I think you've got to be specific with the comparison, as in, is he as good a fighter? Is he as good a boxer? Is it just a character? Is it personality? In what way is he the biggest since Muhammad Ali?
Well, if Ali, I mean, in terms of personality, I think there's a comparison that he is box office whenever he opens his mouth or whenever he does things, and he sometimes plays the heel. Remember, Ali, before he was the greatest, was the Louisville Lip and was getting a lot of criticism at the time, and a lot of people in America didn't like him. They didn't like some of his pronouncements. But when it comes to Tyson Fury, I think his biggest legacy will be what he's done for people with mental health. And that's why I experienced on tour with him. Half the people that were there wanted to meet him because he'd helped them with their mental health journey. And he's a big, rough, tough gypsy at the end of the day, isn't he? And he's come out and been open about his mental health issues. And I think more than boxing, you know, these guys are in their mid-30s. When they get to their mid-50s and when they get to 60, when they look back on their career is one thing. They have the cojones and all that kind of physicality and athleticism to fight in the ring. But it's what they do outside boxing afterwards that is almost going to be more resonant. I think it'll be mental health with him. And I think that societally is going to be more the comparison with Muhammad Ali, who no one can compare to in many ways because of what he did in society. I mean, it's a very interesting point because Sonya wanted this book to be reminiscent of what those black and white photos of Ali looked like back in the 60s, 70s and 80s. That's right, isn't it?
It really, really was, yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Well, because it's intimate access and it's black and white photos for me as well. When you take the color of it, they just become more emotional because you're more focused on the movement in the photos. But those photos
better than color, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like those Muhammad Ali photos, they're reportage that he's running, he's in the kitchen with his mom hugging, and you get emotion. They're vulnerable, and that's what I wanted to attain, is the vulnerability of these boxers, you know, not like these polished photos that you see in the front of magazines that are great, but just more like, who are these people? And I think that's where we were trying to get to.
Fighters are very vulnerable people. They're funny, they're outrageous, they're rough, they're from different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, they're very vulnerable human beings.
They
very
wear their
emotional,
heart on their
very
sleeve.
vulnerable human beings.
They believe in God. They pray on the ring. Like you see it all.
Yeah.
You do.
Well, let's take a look at some of the quotes from the book regarding boxing and fighters and what they're like. There's one from Frank Warren I wanted to put to you, Gareth, and that is, the quote is this: "Boxing is finessing the fight inside you. It takes a unique human being to be a boxer." And those are incredibly deep words from Frank Warren. A unique human being to be a boxer. This is not just anybody can get in the ring and start, windmilling. He's making a serious claim there. Is that what you've found over your years in boxing?
Yeah, and that once the art form, the single martial art is trained and people overcome. I mean, I'm doing shows still at the moment for talkSPORT where I'm delving into people's lives called My Life in Boxing. And a week ago, I spoke to Duke McKenzie, 3-weight world champion.
What a good talker he is, by the way.
He is, but do you know what he said?
Yeah.
Do you know what he said? I wish I hadn't done any of it. I wish I'd been an actor. It's a tough life. And once you realise you're good at it and your amateur coach is going, you know what? Speaks to the parents and says, this guy's very talented. Your kid's very talented, you know. I need to get his card, get him carded with the Amateur Boxing Federation or the Boxing Board of Control. Let's turn him over. Let's get him into fights. It's a very rough profession. And once you train that and you train handling the fear and the nerves and all of those things, as I said at the beginning, it's a fight. Every time they step into the ring as an amateur or a pro, it's a fight. They get hurt. They can get beaten up. No one wants to really be punched in the face. The idea of boxing is to hit and not be hit. What we have with these individuals is an addiction to it, the calling to it, which is deeper inside their DNA. And I think that's what Frank's alluding to. Once you feel that call, once you feel that addiction, you can't step away from it. You've turned a tap on in yourself that you can't escape from.
The call of the warrior, then. I mean, the reason why the book is called that, I want to explore that. And I want to ask the question whether Anthony Joshua has the call of the warrior. Now, the reason why I'm asking this, please don't anybody be offended by this, right? Anthony Joshua says in the book, this wasn't planned. His career wasn't planned. I fell into this. I've got the contender's mentality, not the champion's mentality. Those are his words. Mm-hmm. So can he really have the call of the warrior, specifically that call of the warrior, if it's happened by accident?
I'm going to ask Sonya to speak about that first, and then
that's interesting. Yeah, because look, it's like he was meeting trouble when he was younger, right?
Yep.
So it's basically the boxing was his channel, and so he had a desire to behave and express himself in certain ways, and it wasn't going well. So it's like then he fell into boxing, and that behavior, whatever was inside of him, he channeled it into something legal, and so there was a drive there. So I absolutely do believe that, and he channeled it in the right way.
Do you understand what I'm saying, though? In terms of the call of the warrior, it's like the way I read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that it's there. It's not something that's fabricated. It's not something that's manufactured. It's in you. It's almost like you're born with it, right?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's in all of us.
Yeah.
If something happens to a family member, a child, your grandmother, you will feel something rise in you as a man or a woman, because we all, it's a survival instinct. As refers to Anthony Joshua, everything we write, and this, everything we broadcast is slightly subjective based on our own experience, our own meandering experience. My experience of Anthony Joshua is that obviously he's this physical Adonis. He went to the gym, he built his body up, he had natural talent. He didn't come to the sport till he was 17. He won an Olympic gold medal at 21. He was suddenly known to everyone in the street in the UK, to Great Britain. He was suddenly a national hero. To win a super heavyweight gold medal in boxing in your own country, in your own city at an Olympic Games, you can't ask for a greater platform. So he was almost like he had greatness forced upon him. And he suddenly finds himself 16 fights in with a brilliant promoter, Eddie Hearn. He's a world champion. And I truly believe he didn't know how great he was going to get to. And I think he's been frustrated at the end of his career that he couldn't beat Usyk, that he couldn't be the man of the era, even though he's probably earned hundreds of millions of pounds. He's got companies set up for generational wealth. There are aspects inside himself. The calling is to go further, to go deeper, to go higher, to represent more.
But even the word warrior, it's like anyone that's gone through a challenging time in life in general, you are
battling.
A warrior.
Yeah,
It's
emblematic of that.
And it's relative to our own situation, but we've all been through tough times, and it's like, and we're all warriors in our own right. And it's like a fire, this book could be about anyone. This could be about firemen and or like the police that help the kids at school when there's like a gun shooting. It's like there are warriors everywhere, the different types. We're just talking about these particular ones.
But there's a simplicity in having a fight at a certain weight in a certain place at a certain time and agreed on a contract. You have to go there and do it. There's a simplicity about it. It's ancient and it's human and it's visceral and it's raw. And I think that's what we're celebrating. But people will identify with this, I think.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it's incredible. Some of the quotes in the book are truly incredible, as well as the photos as well. We're not done yet. It is the William Hill Sports Book Club. We're talking about Call of the Warrior by Gareth A. Davies with the photos by Sonya Jasinski. It's the William Hill Sports Book Club. I'm Adrian Durham. Gareth A. Davies and Sonya Jasinski are here talking about Call of the Warrior. Neil Foggin from William Hill as well. I want to start this section by talking about Chapter 18, page 172 of the book. It's Teofimo Lopez, the young fighter who insists he is ready to die for the cause. I want to read the first paragraph because I found it stunning. Now, I knew next to nothing about Teofimo Lopez, I have to confess. anybody who listens to talkSPORT knows boxing isn't really my best subject, but I'm very interested in it. And this first paragraph blew me away. It starts this: sometimes there is a dark underbelly to boxing. There are moments when the visceral nature of the sport is exposed. There is an honesty about its danger and intent. The objective is to hit and not be hit. But fighters also thrill the audience with knockouts by rendering their opponent unconscious. The raw truth is that fighters can be legally killed in the ring. Now, if you can read that and not at least stop and pause for a moment to think, then you're a better person or a worse person than I am. A stunning paragraph. In fact, the whole essay on Teofimo Lopez is truly stunning, isn't it?
It's a short essay. It was the most difficult, believe it or not, it was the most difficult essay in the book to write. I went to a local place in Brentwood, just round the corner from Eddie Hearn's and the Hearn's business, to write that. And when I sent that piece to Sonya, to Hail Mary Publishing that day, I just thought, have I gone to too deep an area here? Because Teofimo Lopez, who that essay goes on to mention 3 or 4 times, twice when I've been around him, he's mentioned, I've wondered about killing myself. Like there's a deep, dark pit inside himself. I tried to make it resonate in the essay where he's compartmentalizing the dangers that he faces every time he steps in the ring. And he's an amazing fighter. This is a guy with a victory over Vasyl Lomachenko, a victory over Josh Taylor that I was at. Sometimes I feel morally ambivalent about doing what I do, believe it or not. And that's what that essay was about. Because sometimes, and I'm very good friends with people like Michael Watson, who's 60 in March, who had catastrophic brain injuries after his fight with Chris Eubank. I've been around fighters, and now they're now dead as a result of boxing. And you just wonder sometimes whether you should be involved or not. And that's what that essay was all about.
Yeah, I mean, it's very deep. Photo as well. I found the photo that you took, Sonya, of Teofimo Lopez. There's a... Maybe it's because, the words are there and you put the words with the photo, but in his eyes, I mean, it's just something extraordinary in his eyes. He's got gloves on. He's in boxing pose in the ring. But he does have a cap on backwards, so he's not actually in the middle of a fight. I just found his face matched the text, if you know what I mean. And I don't quite know how you two did that.
It's funny, isn't it? I'm such an emotional photographer, and but there's a vulnerability on his face there. There really is, and I guess that would have been because I was picture editor on the book too, so. It's just being, I don't know, I just captured something in the right moment, but I am an emotional photographer and it just happens. It just happens. And I would have picked that photo because it suited the body of words. And, in the other photo here is him and his dad. And that's an important figure in his life as well. It's just... I
love the guys in the background of that photo.
Yeah, actually. I do like that. I do like what's going on in the background.
Much going on in the background. I did forget completely earlier to ask you your favourite photo in the book. So if you want to go ahead and do that right now, please feel free.
I know it's a hard one. I have a couple. I do love Frank Warren sitting on a sofa. It's just very Godfather. It's cool. Like it's just such a solid photo of him. I love that, and I love Devin Haney sitting on his bed in the hotel, like the London Plaza, I think it was, because that was like really cool, actually. That was like one of my ultimate access shoots, and Eddie Hearn created that for me. He was like, he's in London with his dad. They're at the plaza or whatever it was, like go at 3:00. They want to be in the book. And then I arrived there, and it was great access. It was like him and his dad, and they had someone there cutting his hair, and we were just like in this tiny hotel room, and it was great. And then I saw this like pot of tea and and I was like, let's just pretend that you're pouring a cup of tea. And it was completely away from boxing. And it was just like a bit of fun. And I just like that I think he would put like some Sprite. He liked drinking Sprite. And it's like he's putting Sprite in the teapot, and it's like we're pretending to mix it. And it's just like, cool, this is like a bit of fun. And we're not in a training camp, and we're like in this like tiny room together, and we're just having a laugh. And I look at that teapot. It's like silver polished, drinking Sprite. Like no one knows what's happening here. It's completely random. And he's laughing, and it's just a fun shot. I actually have that photo framed in my flat in London.
And
I
it's
do
worth
have
it. You can see it is worth it. That's a piece of art.
Yeah, definitely.
It's cool. It's cool. It's
I've got a few. I mean, obviously, the one that Sonya took of me with Tyson Fury is fantastic, but Sonya did a sequence with Ryan Garcia when he's in a white, it's almost like white tux, isn't it? And he looks.
I've got that page open.
He looks like a Hollywood matinee idol. And I bumped into Ryan in London a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Come on, we got to go out." And I know what it's like when you go out with Ryan. You go out. And no, he's crazy.
That sounds familiar.
No, but
this sounds like the perfect marriage.
Yeah, exactly. but there's I love the pic. We went to Bob Arum's favourite hotel to his hotel suite in New York with his wife Lovey, and I've known Bob 35 years, and he was incredibly sweet with us that day. And we jumped in a limo with him to go to a workout as well afterwards, if you recall, Sonya. And he was telling us about a fight he was promoting in New York, and he was late for the press conference, and Hunter S. Thompson had a stretch limo and said, "Bob, jump in with me, I'll drive you there." So do you remember that?
I do,
So some amazing stories with Bob.
Yeah.
And Bob always gives me amazing stories, and I often talk about him with him about politics. For example, he'll talk about Trump, and he'll talk about the presidents who he loved, and he's been around a long time. He's in his 90s, but all the photos are great, and even Vito the dog, my daughter's dog, I was dog sitting him. I'm his grandfather. Is my grand dog? Do I?
He's
say
your
that?
grand dog.
He's my grand
That's
dog.
your grand dog.
And I had him with me for a week, and we had a KSI shoot, and I had to bring him because I couldn't leave him in the flat in Highgate. So he came along in the Jag, and he actually ended up in the ring with KSI. And there's a photo of us.
I was going to bring up that photo. I must mention, you mentioned Ryan Garcia. I mean, he's the best looking man on the
planet. Oh yeah, no, he's a matinee.
Yeah, that was
idol.
a very easy shoot to do. He made it very easy, but he was pumped because I happened to be in LA, and a guy called Joe Markowski, I was like, "Can I get Ryan? I'm in LA." And he was like, "He's here, and I'm going to ask him." And we sent Ryan the PDF of the book and had Canelo in it. And he was like, "If Canelo's in it, I'm definitely going to be in it." He was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Are you doing anything? Like, where are you today?" And he was like, "I'm actually going to Rodeo Drive. I'm going to Dolce & Gabbana at Beverly Hills." And we were just like coming out of lockdown. So we were wearing masks in there. It's like it was really tricky when lockdown happened. But
17 months we couldn't travel, wasn't it? And so we couldn't get any photo shoots done.
I have an
during
American
that time.
citizenship, so I was able to get to the States and do things. But yeah, and so he was getting his suit for the Canelo fight. And so he was so excited about it, and he was excited about being in the book, and he was getting that suit to go to a Canelo fight, and he was with his brother, and we were in Beverly Hills. It was fun. That was really fun.
I always say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I mean, he breaks that rule. He's just
he does.
He's a beautiful human.
He's the fallen angel of boxing, is what we call him, because he's been in trouble recently over his Devin Haney fight. Because he tested positive for banned substances, he weighed over. But Turki Al Sheikh has just made the second fight they're going to have in September this year. So,
all right. And where's that?
That will be in Las Vegas, I imagine.
You mentioned the photo of you with the beautiful dog. I'm a big dog lover. And KSI, and KSI's smile in that photo is just so endearing. And this is the only controversial element of the book, okay? It's called Call of the Warrior. It's about some incredible boxers. And you make a compelling case about that calling being a very real thing. And really compelling. And the chapters on Amanda Serrano, for example.
Yeah.
Hamza Shiraz. These are... You can sense what you mean by Call of the Warrior reading those chapters, okay? But Call of the Warrior, think about those words. KSI is featured in the book. Jake Paul is also featured in the book. Did they really hear the call of the warrior or the call of the moneymaker?
Well, I mean, as you say, the biggest names, some of the biggest names in boxing in there, along with, people like Dmitry Bivol, Vasyl Lomachenko, Billy Joe Saunders, Shaka Stevenson, Alexander Usyk, Amir Khan. We haven't mentioned them today, but we felt, and it was a strong decision, that we should have KSI and Jake Paul, or the Paul brothers. Logan's mentioned in there as well, because in the course, when we started the book, we wouldn't have had them in there. But over the course of the last 5 years, the influencer scene has been so big, and I mean, I covered for talkSPORT Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. It was enormous. It did massive numbers. I know it disappointed on the night, but both KSI and the Paul brothers, particularly Jake, they've carved a niche with their, between them, 50 million subscribers online, which wasn't there 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that has brought boxing onto a new platform, and they don't want to go away. Yes, there's money in it for them, and they're not making music and doing gaming and doing all the things, podcasting. They have got into it, certainly those two, and they can't give it up. They're addicted to it. And we believe, and I know them both, we know them both, I think they're addicted to fighting now.
So they have heard the call of the warrior.
They've heard the call of the warrior.
You would maintain that to anybody who criticised it.
I promise you. And I see it. I see it. Even though the purists don't like it, and I get that as well. I'm in the business of not knocking people that want to get involved in the fight industry, because I think it's all good for the fight industry. Years ago, a guy called Arthur Craven, who was Oscar Wilde's nephew, fought Jack Johnson in a bull ring in Spain. I'm talking years ago, 100 years ago. He'd never fought in his life, but he was 6'5". He was a Dadaist, an intellectual, and he won the French light heavyweight championship of the world. But he'd only won because no one else turned up, so he was installed as the champion. And when he fought Jack Johnson, who was on the run from America at the time for taking a white woman across county lines, and broke the... Donald Trump changed the rule on that, by the way, when he was in last. There's always been weird matchups in boxing. There's always been the circus come to the sport. There's Wilt Chamberlain, who was 7'2", who was a basketball player, was going to fight Muhammad Ali back in the 70s. It never happened. But boxing is a weird, or fight sports is a weird carnival. It's a circus at times. They are part of the environs of the circus. Weird matchups, but those two definitely feel the call to fight, in my view.
I would say as well, and I got to know Aaron, the guy from Geordie Shore, who went into...
Yeah, I'm friends with Aaron. Yeah, he can fight.
Arts, yeah. Because all I knew was he was in Geordie Shore. He used to drink a lot and had a great time, and it was one of my favourite characters in the programme.
Yeah.
Surprised
the only nice character.
Surprised I'm a Geordie Shore fan, aren't you?
But, no, not at all. No, not at all.
When I met
We've
him,
all got our hidden secrets.
I would definitely say, oh, there's worse than that. There's some dark places there. But I definitely think he had the call of the warrior, because
correct.
Just speaking to him, the passion that he had when you're talking to him about what he was doing in the ring or the octagon, fantastic. So I am not judging negatively the YouTubers and influencers who want to get in the ring. And as I always used to, you know this, on Drive, when I used to do the Drive show on talkSPORT, I always maintained, and this stems, I'll tell you the history of this, I always maintained that anybody who got into the ring and said to somebody else, try to punch me in the face, deserves everybody's respect.
Concur,
and
100%.
And there's no exceptions with that. And that all stems from years ago. Do you remember when Julius Francis fought Mike Tyson in Manchester?
Yep.
I was at the fight, and I spoke about Julius Francis in a way I shouldn't have done, in a dismissive way, okay? Because I don't think, listen, he wasn't the greatest fighter in the world, he'd admit that. But I just thought to myself, hang on a minute. I came off air and I thought, you've just been really dismissive of a guy who said, I'm going to get in the ring with Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
How can you possibly do that? And from that moment onwards, it's just been total respect, because you have to respect these guys.
You're putting yourself on the line.
Yeah.
You've got massive cojones for stepping in there. And like you say, if someone's a scaffolder and they're a journeyman and they're 4 stone overweight and they're fighting at the York Hall on a Friday night, first on the card, I never, ever have a lack of respect for those people. Ever. You can't do it.
Well, we've got a respect for this book, and I think we must mention before we close the show, and maybe Sonya might be able to help us more with this, Gareth, is you did have, we've joked about it earlier, but you did have some serious health issues during the 5 years of writing this book. And would it be fair to say that he nearly died 3 times, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, there were a few events. So, wait, talk me through them again.
Heart attack.
Heart attack.
Stroke.
A stroke. And
Bleed on the brain.
A bleed on the brain.
And every time you said you better not die.
And this is all in the last 5 years while you've been writing this book.
All in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I felt the finish for the Call of the Warrior. I can now successfully die, having finished the book. Well, in Sonya's world.
I mean,
anyway.
look, we were well on our way and very invested in this project, and there were some scares, and it was. Look, of course, I love Gareth deeply, and it comes from this like mothering worry about him, but also like we needed to get the book done, Gareth, and there were a few events, and it wasn't good.
But can you actually believe you said that? You better not effing die.
Yeah,
I'm glad I didn't, and I'm glad it's here, and I'm glad we're here talking to you guys.
And just off the back of that, knowing how you'd had those issues, and you could have just gone with all 3 of those issues. When you first picked up the finished book and you've opened it, I mean, did you? The way you conduct your life is you're just like, you seem like you're loving life. You live it to the full, you live it to the max, and you're enthusiastic, and it affects everybody around you in a very positive way, Gareth. I have to say that. But surely at some point, when you've picked up this book and realised what's gone on over the last 5 years, you've got emotional deep inside.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
The day we went to the printers in Woolwich, and amazing printers as they are, and Sonya sought out literally the best printers in London, I can remember opening the book and reading "The rewards are there for all of us who fight," and I absolutely sobbed. Do you remember?
You did.
And
it
we
was
both
emotional.
got very emotional. Actually, I feel emotional saying it now, just actually feeling the book physically and opening the first page. Genuinely very emotional.
Yeah, doing a book's a real emotional drive, and I don't think people realize what goes on and like behind the scenes. And it's just like, like Gareth trying to write all the essays and do every boxer justice and remember the important moments and write positively about them, but also like he has to also look at it in both ways, and it's getting that balance right and putting pressure on Gareth about that, and looking at these photos for 5 years and then suddenly looking at them going, actually all these photos I'm not even sure I feel about them anymore. I've looked at them so many times, and just like, and then the team that you get involved in, it's such an emotional journey that you don't really think's ever going to happen. You just don't think you're
There's
ever going to get
hundreds of photos we've never
the end of
used.
it.
There are longer essays. There are essays about other people we haven't used yet. And as I said at the top when we started, the feedback, what we wanted to do was every person that's in the book, we wanted them to go, you captured me there. And every single person that's in the book, and a lot of people who are involved in boxing or aren't in the book, they just made it so rewarding for us afterwards, because they said, I love it. I love it. So, we can't ask for more than that.
Well, we love it as well, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
It's brilliant.
Thank you.
My thanks to Sonya. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And to Gareth. Wonderful as ever.
My pleasure.
And for coming in and for giving the world this amazing book, Call of the Warrior. Thanks, Foggy, as well. Enjoyed it. You can watch this and previous episodes of the William Hill Sports Book Club by heading to the talkSPORT YouTube channel. Recent episodes you can watch include Miguel Delaney's episode on his book States of Play, Sports Washing in Football. The one about Khalida Popal's powerful moving book, My Beautiful Sisters, is incredible. Also, the book that won last year's William Hill Award, The Racket by Conor Nyland, that's there as well. These and more, all available as podcasts as well. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time on the William Hill Sports Book Club.